The snow fell in soft, deceptive clumps as I turned onto the street where I grew up, rehearsing my truce like a prayer. In the back seat, my 7-year-old hummed a carol. Oblivious to the tension tightening my chest, I promised myself I would swallow every insult for the sake of a peaceful memory. I did not know yet that peace was never on the menu, only a cold, calculated exile served on fine china, waiting to destroy us. The windshield wipers sliced back and forth, clearing away the wet, heavy snow that had been falling since noon. It was the kind of snow that looked beautiful on a postcard, but felt treacherous under tires, slick and unpredictable. I gripped the steering wheel with both hands, my knuckles white against the dark leather, and forced myself to breathe. In and out, in and out. It is only 3 hours, I told myself. You can do anything for 3 hours. In the rearview mirror, I caught a glimpse of my son. He was 7 years old, wearing the miniature navy blazer I had ironed that morning and a clip-on tie he had insisted on choosing himself because it had tiny reindeer printed on the silk. He was humming a song he had learned in the school choir, his head bobbing to a rhythm only he could hear. He looked happy. He looked safe. That was the only reason I was driving into this neighborhood. For the last 4 years. My relationship with my parents had been defined by what we did not say. We did not talk about the divorce. We did not talk about the struggle of single motherhood. We did not talk about the fact that I had not been invited to Thanksgiving. We existed in a polite, frozen distance, a truce that felt as fragile as thin ice over a deep river. But this year, they had reached out. They had sent a formal card inviting us to Christmas dinner. I wanted to believe it was a branch of olive and pine offered in good faith. I wanted my son to know his grandparents, to smell the cedar closet in the hallway and taste the cranberry sauce that my mother made from scratch. I wanted him to have the history that I felt slipping through my fingers. Just keep it light. I rehearsed in the silence of my mind. Smile. Ask about their golf game. Compliment the decor. Do not take the bait. The suburban streets were lined with houses that looked like fortresses of holiday cheer. Every lawn was perfectly manicured beneath the frost. Every string of lights straightened with military precision. I turned onto the familiar cul-de-sac and felt the old heavy weight settle in my stomach. My parents' house stood at the end of the court. It was grand, imposing, and aggressively festive. A wreath the size of a tractor tire hung on the front door, adorned with gold ribbon that shimmered under the porch lights. I parked the car and turned off the engine. The silence rushed in. "Are we here, Mom?" my son asked, his voice bright with anticipation. "We are," I said, turning to smile at him. I unbuckled my seatbelt and reached back to squeeze his knee. "Now, remember the plan? We use our best manners. We say please and thank you, and we have a wonderful time." "I know," he said, rolling his eyes playfully. "Grandma and Grandpa like quiet voices." "That is right," I said. "Quiet voices." We stepped out into the biting cold. The air smelled of wood smoke and impending snow. I took his hand, his small fingers warm in mine, and walked up the long driveway. The pavement had been shoveled and salted so thoroughly it looked dry. I rang the doorbell, and I could hear the chime echo deep inside the house. My mother opened the door. She looked immaculate. She was wearing a cashmere sweater the color of heavy cream and trousers that held a razor-sharp crease. Her hair was a helmet of blonde perfection, not a single strand out of place. When she saw us, her mouth formed a smile, but the expression stopped at her lips. Her eyes remained cool, assessing, scanning me for flaws before I had even crossed the threshold. "Piper," she said, "you made it." "Merry Christmas, Mom," I said. I leaned in to hug her, but she turned her cheek, offering me only the briefest contact of skin against skin. It was like kissing a marble statue. "And look at this big boy," she said, looking down at my son. She did not crouch down to his level. She did not open her arms. She stood tall, smiling that tight, bright smile. "Wipe your feet, please. We just had the carpets done." We stepped inside. The house was warm, smelling of cinnamon and expensive potpourri, the kind that masks the scent of actual living. It looked like a catalog spread. The banister was wrapped in fresh garland. The stockings on the mantel were new, velvet and embroidered with gold thread, perfectly spaced. I looked at the mantel, counting them. There was one for my mother, one for my father, and one for my younger sibling. There was even a small one for the dog. There was no stocking for me. There was no stocking for my son. I swallowed the lump in my throat and looked away, focusing on the side table where my mother always displayed the framed family highlights of the year. It was a tradition she had started when we were children. Every Christmas, she would curate a collection of photos representing the family's best moments. I walked over, feigning casual interest. I saw a photo of my parents in Cabo, a photo of my sibling graduating from their certification program, a photo of my father accepting an award from the Rotary Club, a photo of the dog running on the beach. I was not in a single picture. My son was not in a single picture. It was as if we had ceased to exist in the calendar year. "Piper," I turned. My father was standing in the doorway of the study. He held a tumbler of scotch in one hand, the amber liquid catching the light. He had aged, his hair whiter, his face more lined, but he still carried himself with the rigid authority of a man who expects to be obeyed without question. "Hello, Dad," I said. He did not smile. He walked toward me, his steps heavy and deliberate. He stopped 2 feet away, maintaining a distance that felt less like a greeting and more like a performance review. "I am glad you decided to come," he said. His voice was smooth, baritone, and devoid of warmth. "But before we go into the dining room, I want to be clear about expectations. We are having a pleasant evening. We are respecting boundaries. We are not bringing up past grievances." It was an ambush. I had been in the house for less than 3 minutes, and already I was being managed. He spoke to me as if I were a volatile employee he was reluctant to rehire. "I am here to celebrate Christmas, Dad," I said, keeping my voice steady. "That is all." "Good," he said. He took a sip of his drink, his eyes narrowing slightly. "We have worked hard to maintain a certain atmosphere in this house. Peace is a priority. Respect is a priority." "I understand," I said. "See that you do," he said. He turned and walked toward the living room without waiting for a response. I felt a flush of heat rise in my cheeks, a mixture of shame and anger, but I pushed it down. I looked at my son, who was staring at the towering Christmas tree in the corner, his eyes wide with wonder. He had not heard the lecture. He only saw the lights. "Look at the star, Mom," he whispered. "It is huge. It is beautiful," I said, forcing a smile. "Go take a look." We moved into the dining room. The table was set for 12. The china was the good set, the one with the platinum rim that we were never allowed to touch as children. The crystal glasses sparkled under the chandelier. The extended family was already there. My Aunt Linda was sitting near the head of the table, nursing a glass of white wine. She was my mother's sister, a woman who treated gossip like a competitive sport. Next to her was my cousin, a 20-year-old college student who was currently holding her phone up, recording a panoramic video of the table setup for her social media followers. And there, at the far end, was my younger sibling. They looked tired. That was my first thought. My sibling was 29, but they looked younger. Their posture hunched, their eyes darting around the room. They were tapping furiously on their phone beneath the table. When our eyes met, they offered a quick, nervous grimace that might have been a smile. "Sit anywhere," my mother said, gesturing vaguely toward the end of the table. Furthest from the host chairs, I took a seat next to my son. He sat up straight, placing his napkin in his lap, just as I had taught him. I felt a surge of fierce pride. He was behaving better than any adult in the room. Dinner began with a soup course, a butternut squash bisque that tasted faintly of nutmeg. The conversation started with the weather, then moved to the local real estate market, and then settled into the interrogation phase. "So, Piper," Aunt Linda said, her voice piercing the clatter of spoons, "are you still working at that? What was it? The graphic design place?" I am an art director now. Aunt Linda, I said politely, at the agency in the city. Oh, she said, eyebrows raised. And that pays the bills. I know the city is so expensive, especially for a single income. She let the words single income hang in the air like a bad smell. We are doing just fine, I said. Leo loves his school, and the work is very fulfilling. Well, it is good you enjoy it, she said, turning back to her soup. Not everyone can chase their passions. Some people have to be practical. My cousin, without looking up from her phone, said, Can you pass the salt? I need it for the aesthetic. My father cleared his throat. The table fell silent. It was a conditioned response. When the patriarch prepared to speak, the subjects listened. We were just talking about practicality, my father said, looking directly at my sibling. Casey has been showing remarkable maturity lately, very stable, very loyal to the family vision. My sibling looked down at their plate, their face flushing. Thanks, Dad. It is true, my mother chimed in, her voice overly animated. Casey understands that family is a unit. You have to move together. You have to make good choices that benefit everyone, not just yourself. That is how families move on from difficult times. I stiffened. The subtext was not subtle. It was a neon sign pointing directly at me. I was the cautionary tale. I was the one who had left by getting divorced, by moving to the city, by refusing to conform to their suffocating standards of image. Casey has been helping us with so much administrative work. My father continued, handling the estate planning, looking at the future. It is a relief to have someone we can trust explicitly. Trust is everything, my mother agreed. She looked at me then. Do you not agree? Piper's stability and loyalty are the pillars of a good life. I think honesty is important too, I said quietly. The air in the room changed. The temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. Of course, my father said. His voice clipped. But honesty without respect is just rebellion. I took a sip of water. My hand was trembling slightly, so I set the glass down quickly. I could feel my son shifting in his chair beside me. He sensed the tension. Children always know when the air becomes too thin to breathe. I got 100 on my spelling test, my son said suddenly. His voice was small but clear. He was trying to help. He was trying to break the heaviness. And I scored a goal in soccer last week. It was a left-footed kick. For a second, the table warmed. My sibling looked up and smiled for real. That is awesome, Bud. Left-footed. That is hard. It was, my son beamed. Coach said, Let us keep personal matters private, please. My mother cut in. Her voice was sharp, like a slap. She was not looking at my son. She was looking at the centerpiece. We are eating dinner. We do not need a play-by-play of schoolyard games. My son's mouth snapped shut. The light in his eyes extinguished instantly. He shrank back into his chair, looking at his lap. That was the moment. The sadness inside me calcified into something hard and cold. It was one thing to treat me like an outsider. It was another to shame a 7-year-old boy for trying to share his joy. He is just sharing his life. Mom, I said. My voice was low, but it carried. He is your grandson. He is a child who needs to learn table manners, my mother said dismissively, and we are trying to have a civilized conversation about the future. The future. I asked. Or just your version of it. My father placed his silverware down on his plate. The sound was like a gavel striking a sounding block. He dabbed his mouth with his linen napkin and placed it on the table. Since you brought it up, my father said. He looked around the table. He looked at Aunt Linda, who was pretending to examine her wineglass. He looked at the cousin, who had stopped filming. He looked at my sibling, who was staring fixedly at the tablecloth. Finally, he looked at me. Your mother and I have made a decision, he said. A decision about what? I asked. About the family dynamic, he said. We have been doing a lot of thinking. We have been consulting with advisors, and we have come to the conclusion that this current arrangement is not working. I do not understand, I said. We are just having dinner. It is not just dinner, Piper, he said. It is the energy you bring. It is the history. It is the constant reminder of failures we are trying to move past. We have decided that it is best for the family, for the health of the family unit, if you distance yourself completely. I stared at him. The room felt like it was tilting. Distance myself. You invited us here. A trial, he said. One that has confirmed our instincts. So, what are you saying? I asked. I could feel my heart hammering against my ribs, a frantic bird trapped in a cage. I am saying that after dinner. You should leave, my father said. He spoke calmly, as if he were giving directions to the highway. And you should not return. We are entering a new phase of our lives. We are focusing on legacy, on positive contributions, and frankly, you do not fit into that picture. You are kicking me out, I whispered. On Christmas. We are setting you free, he corrected. We are establishing a boundary. It is not up for discussion. It is a decision we have made for the greater good. I looked at my mother. I waited for her to soften, to intervene, to say that this was madness. She was my mother. She had bandaged my knees. She had taught me to read. She looked back at me with eyes that were terrifyingly empty. She picked up her wine glass and swirled the liquid. You always bring chaos. Piper, she said softly. She smiled, a sad, patronizing expression that made my skin crawl. We are choosing peace this year. She did not look at my son. She did not acknowledge that she was severing ties with her only grandchild. She simply took a sip of wine. Silence stretched out, thick and suffocating. My cousin was looking at me with wide eyes. Aunt Linda was looking at the ceiling. My sibling looked like they wanted to vomit, but they remained silent. I looked at my son. He was trembling. He did not understand the words, but he understood the tone. He knew we were unwanted. I took a deep breath. I pushed the rage down, way down, into the cellar of my soul where I would keep it for later. I would not give them a scene. I would not give them the satisfaction of tears. I would not let my son see me break. Okay, I said. I stood up. My legs felt steady, surprisingly so. Come on, Leo, I said gently. But we didn't have dessert, he whispered, his voice shaking. We will have dessert at home, I said. The best dessert. Come on. I helped him out of his chair. I did not rush. I walked around the table to where our coats were draped over a side chair. I helped him into his puffer jacket. I zipped it up to his chin. I put on my own coat. I picked up the small bag of gifts I had brought, a scarf for my mother, a book for my father. I did not leave them. They did not deserve them. I turned to the table one last time. My father was already cutting his meat. My mother was buttering a roll. They had already moved on. Thank you for dinner, I said. My voice did not shake. It was the hardest thing I've ever done. I took my son's hand and walked out of the dining room. I walked down the hallway, past the perfect garland and the perfect photos. I opened the heavy front door and stepped out into the cold. The snow was falling harder now. It swirled around us, biting at our cheeks. As I pulled the door shut, I heard the lock turn. It was a loud, distinct click, a deadbolt sliding home. It was the sound of a final period at the end of a sentence. We walked to the car in silence. The snow crunched under our boots. I opened the back door and helped my son inside. I buckled him in, smoothing his hair. Mom, he asked, are they mad at us? No, baby, I said. I kept my voice light, steady, agonizingly normal. The adults are just having some big feelings tonight. Sometimes adults get confused, but it has nothing to do with you. You were perfect. You were the best boy in the whole world. Okay, he said small. We are going to go home, I said. We are going to make cocoa. We are going to watch the movie with the snowman. Okay. Okay. I closed his door and got into the driver's seat. I sat there for a moment, gripping the wheel, staring at the house. The lights were glowing warmly from the windows. It looked like a postcard. It looked like a lie. I took my phone out of my pocket to check the GPS for the fastest route home. The screen lit up in the darkness. There was a notification at the top of the screen. A new email. I frowned. It was Christmas Day. Who was emailing me? I unlocked the phone and opened the mail app. The subject line stared up at me, stark and official against the white background. Subject notice of property transfer, action required. I stared at it. The sender was a name I did not recognize. A title company. An escrow officer. My brain felt sluggish, trying to process the data through the fog of shock. I tossed the phone onto the passenger seat. I could not deal with it now. I could not deal with anything but the road and the boy in the back seat. I started the engine and backed out of the driveway. As I drove away, I looked in the rearview mirror. The house grew smaller and smaller until it was just a blur of lights in the snow. And then, as I turned the corner, it was gone. The drive home was a blur of white headlights and silence. I navigated the familiar route to our rental apartment, a 2-bedroom unit on the second floor of a converted Victorian house. It was not the sprawling estate I had just been exiled from, but it had a sturdy roof, a landlord who fixed leaks within 24 hours, and it was ours. When we walked inside, the air was still and cool. I immediately turned up the thermostat and knelt to unzip my son's coat. He looked at me, his eyes large and searching, waiting for the crack in my armor. "All right," I said, clapping my hands together softly. "Change of plans. We are doing the Super Christmas Special. That means pajamas immediately. Hot cocoa with double marshmallows. And we are starting the movie before we even unpack the car." "Double marshmallows?" he asked, a tentative smile touching his lips. "Maybe even triple," I said. "Go, run." He scampered off to his room, and I leaned against the doorframe, letting out a breath that shook my entire ribcage. I could not collapse, not yet. I had to be the wall that held the roof up. I moved into the kitchen. Acting on autopilot, I heated the milk, found the tin of cocoa powder, and dug out the bag of marshmallows from the back of the pantry. I arranged a plate of store-bought cookies that I'd been saving. I lit the cinnamon candle on the coffee table. By the time my son emerged, wearing his flannel pajamas with the polar bears on them, the living room glowed with a warmth that felt almost real. We sat on the couch under a heavy knit blanket. I put on the movie about the boy who rides the train to the North Pole. We drank our cocoa. We laughed at the funny parts. I held him tighter than usual, stroking his hair, grounding myself in the physical reality of his safety. I was furious, a cold, sharp rage that sat in the base of my throat, but I smothered it with sugar and blankets. I would not let them steal this night from him. It was nearly 10 o'clock when he finally drifted off, his head heavy on my lap. I carried him to his bed, tucked him in, and kissed his forehead. "Merry Christmas, baby," I whispered. I closed his door until it was just a sliver of light. Then, I walked back into the living room and let the mask drop. I sank onto the couch, the silence of the apartment pressing in on me. The scene at the dinner table replayed in my mind on an endless loop. The coldness of my father's voice, the cruelty of my mother's smile. Leave and never return. It was melodramatic, almost theatrical, but the intent was dead serious. They had cut me off. I reached for my phone, which I had ignored since the driveway. I needed to see the email. I opened the notification. Subject notice of property transfer action required. From J.R. Miller, escrow assistant. I tapped it open. The text was brief, professional, and confusing. Dear Ms. Russell, we are following up regarding the pending transfer for the property at 404 Maple Lane. We have not yet received your signed beneficiary confirmation form, as the closing date is set for December 31st. This is urgent. Please sign the attached DocuSign immediately to avoid delaying the transaction. I stared at the address. 404 Maple Lane. It was not my parents' house. It was my grandmother's cottage. My grandmother had passed away 3 years ago. I loved that house. It was a small, shingled bungalow near the lake, the place where I had spent my summers hiding from my parents' rigid expectations. I knew my father was the executor of her estate, but I had been told years ago that the property was being held in a trust for long-term family investment. Why were they selling it? And why was an escrow officer emailing me? I looked at the timestamp. The email had been sent at 4 o'clock that afternoon, right while I was driving to my parents' house. I hesitated. It was late on Christmas night, but the email signature had a mobile number listed under urgent inquiries. I dialed the number. I expected voicemail, but after 3 rings, a woman answered. She sounded tired and distracted, background noise suggesting she was also at a family gathering. "Jennifer Miller," she answered. "Hi, I am so sorry to bother you on the holiday," I said, keeping my voice professional. "This is Piper Russell. I just saw your email." "Oh, Ms. Russell," she said, her tone shifting to relief. "Thank you for calling back. I know it is Christmas, but we are under the gun for this year-end close. Did you get the DocuSign working?" "I am actually confused," I said. "I did not know the property was being sold. Why do you need my signature?" There was a pause on the line. "Because you are a beneficial interest holder on the title," she said slowly. "The primary trustee, your father, is executing the sale, but because of the trust structure, we need the waiver from all beneficiaries confirming they have been notified of the dissolution." "The dissolvement?" I asked. "They are dissolving the trust." "Yes," she said, "to liquidate the asset. Look, your father's attorney said you were fully briefed on this last month. They sent over the packet." "I never received a packet," I said. "That is strange," she said. "We have it noted that notice was sent. Maybe check your spam. We really need that signature, Ms. Russell. If we do not close by the 31st, the tax implications for the buyer are significant, and your father was very specific about that deadline." "I will look for it," I said. "Thank you." I hung up. My heart was thumping a slow, heavy rhythm. I opened my email app again and went to the search bar. I typed in trust, nothing in the inbox. I tapped on the spam folder. It was full of promotional junk, miracle cures, and phishing scams. I scrolled down, scanning the dates. There it was. Subject: Russell Family Trust Amendment. Notification date November 15th, and another one. Subject: urgent. Please sign date December 1st. My stomach dropped. They had been sent from a local law firm, Holloway and Associates, a small practice I knew my father used for routine business. The email provider had flagged them as suspicious, likely because of the attachments. I opened the first one. It was a formal letter attached as a PDF. I downloaded it and zoomed in on the tiny text. "Dear Miss Russell. Attached, please find the Third Amendment to the Eleanor Russell Living Trust. As per the terms of the original instrument, this amendment reflects updates to the beneficiary schedule based on current family standing." I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the drafty window. Current family standing. I did not read the whole legal document right then. My eyes were blurring with exhaustion and stress. But I understood the implication. They were moving pieces on a board I did not even know I was playing on. I slept fitfully that night, waking up every hour to check the locks. My dreams haunted by the sound of that deadbolt clicking shut. The next morning, December 26th, the sun rose bright and harsh. The snow from the day before was blindingly white. I made pancakes for my son, keeping up the charade of the extended holiday. We built a Lego castle on the living room rug. I smiled until my face hurt. Around 10 in the morning, my phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. It was a text from my mother. I stared at her name on the screen. A part of me, the part that was still a child seeking approval, hoped it was an apology. I hoped she would say it was a mistake, that they had drunk too much wine, that they missed us. I opened the message. "Hope you got home safe. This is for the best. Please do not make this ugly." I read it twice. It did not sound like my mother. My mother was passive-aggressive, guilt-inducing, and flowery. She used phrases like, "I just want what is best for my baby," and "You know how much I worry. Please do not make this ugly." That was not maternal guidance. That was legal posturing. It sounded like a phrase someone had dictated to her, or a line she had copied from a strategy memo. It was a warning disguised as a wish. I did not reply. "Mom, can we go to the park?" my son asked, holding up a Lego dragon. "Not right now, buddy," I said. "Mom has to make a boring phone call, but we can watch a movie." "Okay," he said, easily distracted. I needed to talk to someone who was not in my head. I texted Sarah, a friend from work who was the most pragmatic person I knew. She was a project manager who treated life's problems like tickets in a software queue. "Emergency coffee," I typed. "Meet me at the Bean in 30. She replied. I called a neighbor, Mrs. Gable, a sweet retired woman who adored my son, and asked if she could watch him for an hour. She agreed immediately, happy for the company. I met Sarah at the coffee shop downtown. It was crowded with people returning gifts and nursing holiday hangovers. We found a small table in the back. I told her everything: the dinner, the exile, the email, the cottage. Sarah listened without interrupting, sipping her black coffee. When I finished, she set her cup down. "Piper," she said, "you know this was a setup, right?" "It felt like a setup," I said. "But why do it on Christmas? Why be so cruel?" "Because Christmas is a deadline," she said. "Look at the timeline. They need to sell this house by December 31st. They need your signature. They knew you would ask questions if they just sent the papers. So they created a crisis. A crisis. They manufactured a fight," Sarah said, leaning in. "They kicked you out to create distance. Now, when you see the papers, the narrative is already set. Piper is estranged. Piper is difficult. We can't talk to her. It justifies whatever shady maneuvering they are doing with the trust. They didn't throw you out for Christmas vibes. They needed you away from the house and away from the paperwork so you wouldn't have time to read the fine print. They wanted me to be too emotional to think," I realized. "Exactly," Sarah said. "They are banking on you being so hurt and humiliated that you just sign the paper to get it over with, or that you ignore it entirely so they can bypass you. It is tactical." I felt a cold clarity wash over me. Sarah was right. My father did not do drama for drama's sake. He did things for results. "I need to see those documents," I said. "Get them," Sarah said. "And do not sign a single thing until you understand what they are stealing from you." I left the coffee shop with a new sense of purpose. I went back to my car and called Holloway and Associates. I knew the office might be closed, but I tried the general line. To my surprise, a receptionist answered. "Holloway and Associates." "Hi, this is Piper Russell," I said. "I am calling regarding the Russell Family Trust. I need a full copy of the current trust instrument and the pending amendment sent to me immediately. The copies sent previously were corrupted." I lied smoothly. I needed them to resend it officially. "One moment, Ms. Russell," the receptionist said. I waited on hold for 5 minutes. When she returned, her voice was tight. "I have sent a secure link to your email," she said. "Please confirm receipt." "I have it," I said as the notification popped up. "Thank you." I sat in my car and opened the file on my phone. It was 40 pages long. I scrolled to the section marked Beneficiaries. In the original trust, dated 5 years ago, my name was listed clearly: Piper Russell. 30% share of all real property assets. Then I scrolled to the amendment, the one dated November 15th. Due to the estrangement and non-contact of the beneficiary Piper Russell, her share is hereby reduced to a fixed sum of $5,000, with the remainder of her previous interest transferring to the secondary beneficiary, Casey Russell. I stared at the screen. Non-contact, I had called them every Sunday. I had sent birthday cards. I had tried, for years, to maintain a relationship despite their coldness. They had legally defined our relationship as non-contact to cut me out, and they were giving my share to Casey, my younger sibling. My phone rang in my hand. It was Casey. I stared at the name. "Speak of the devil," I answered. "Hello?" Piper. Casey's voice was high and trembling. Mom said you're not answering her texts. I am a little busy, Casey, I said. I just found out I have been erased from Grandma's trust because of non-contact. Look, that's complicated, Casey stammered. You don't understand the pressure. Piper, Dad says this is the only way to protect the family assets. Protect them from who? I asked. From me, I am your sister. You should have apologized years ago, Casey snapped, the aggression sudden and brittle. You left. You moved away. You made everything so hard for them. They are just trying to fix things. They are trying to build something for the future, and you are always in the way. Casey, I said, my voice quiet. Did you know about this? Did you know they were transferring my share to you? There was silence on the other end, heavy, breathing silence. I didn't have a choice, Casey whispered, the anger dissolving into something that sounded like fear. They said if I didn't sign off on the changes, they would cut me off too. They said they needed a united front. I have student loans. Piper, I can't lose their support. So you sold me out, I said. I am protecting the family, Casey shouted, the slogan returning like a shield. Just sign the papers. Piper, please, do not ruin this. If the sale doesn't go through by New Year's, Dad says everything falls apart. What falls apart? Just sign it, Casey yelled, and then hung up. I sat there, looking at the disconnected screen. My sibling was not a villain. They were a hostage. My parents had weaponized Casey's financial dependence to turn them into an accomplice. I needed more information. I needed to know why the deadline was so absolute. Why December 31st? Why the panic? I scrolled through my contacts and found Aunt Linda's number, the gossip, the woman who couldn't keep a secret if her life depended on it. I dialed. Piper, she answered after the second ring. She sounded wary. Your mother told me what happened at dinner. I really do not want to get involved. I do not want to drag you in. Aunt Linda, I said, keeping my voice soft and pleading. I am confused. They kicked me out, and now I am getting these legal papers about Grandma's cottage. I just wanted to know if everyone is okay. Casey sounded so stressed. Well, of course Casey is stressed, Linda said, her desire to correct me overriding her caution. It is a massive week for the family. The announcement is on Saturday. The announcement, I asked innocently. The gala, Linda said. The Community Pillars charity gala. Your father is supposed to announce the donation. What donation? The proceeds from the cottage sale, Linda said, lowering her voice to a conspiratorial whisper. He is pledging the entire sale amount to the Founders Fund. It is going to put the family name on the new hospital wing. But he can't announce the pledge if the money isn't secured by the end of the year. That is why he is so frantic. My hand tightened on the steering wheel. I see, I said. So it is for charity. It is for the legacy, Linda corrected. You know how your father is about legacy. He wants to be seen as the town benefactor. He has been planning this for months. That is why you are a problem, dear. He can't have a messy, estranged daughter questioning the source of the funds or demanding her cut. It looks bad. It looks like the family isn't whole. Right, I said. It looks bad. Just let it go, Piper, Linda said, her voice dripping with false sympathy. Let them have their moment. You have your own life. Thanks, Aunt Linda, I said. That clarifies everything. I ended the call. The pieces slammed into place. This was not about money, not for them. They were wealthy enough. This was about glory. My father wanted to stand on a stage, bathed in applause, and hand over a giant check that would buy him immortality in the form of a hospital wing. He wanted to be the benevolent patriarch, but the money he was giving away wasn't entirely his. 30% of it was mine. 30% of it was my son's future, his college fund, our security, a down payment on a house that wasn't a rental. My father was stealing my inheritance to buy his reputation, and he had exiled me to ensure I wasn't in the room to object when he signed the deed. He needed a clean story. He needed me to be the villain, the ungrateful child who had to be cut off, so that his theft looked like protection. I looked at the dashboard clock. It was 1 in the afternoon. I could scream. I could drive back to their house and bang on the door. I could post the truth on Facebook. No. No drama, I whispered to the empty car. Just truth and paperwork. I did not want revenge. I wanted stability. I wanted to ensure that my son did not pay the price for my parents' vanity. I started the car and drove out of the parking lot. I did not go home. I drove to the next town over, to a small office building I had looked up on my phone while sitting in the parking lot. I walked into the office of a family law attorney named Marcus Thorne. I didn't have an appointment, but the receptionist looked up, saw the determination in my eyes, and the snow melting on my coat. "Can I help you?" she asked. "I need to book an emergency consultation," I said. "Regarding a trust dispute and potential fraud." "We have an opening at 3 o'clock, she said. "I will wait," I said. I sat down in the waiting room. I pulled out my phone and texted my neighbor that I would be a little late picking up my son. Then, I opened the PDF of the trust amendment again. I read every word. I looked at the signature line. It was my name, printed at the bottom as a placeholder. They thought I would fold. They thought I would be too hurt, too scared, or too chaotic to fight back. They thought I was the piper they had created in their minds, the mess, the disappointment. They were wrong. I wasn't doing this to hurt them. I was doing this because for the first time in my life, I wasn't looking for their permission to exist. I was looking for the exit, and I was going to make sure I took what was mine on the way out. "Ms. Russell," the attorney called from the doorway. I stood up, smoothed my coat, and walked into the office. The war had begun, and I was going to fight it with the one thing they feared more than anything else, the receipts. Marcus Thorne's office did not look like a place where families went to die, but it certainly smelled like it. The air was thick with the scent of old paper, lemon polish, and the faint, metallic tang of expensive espresso. I sat in a leather chair that was slightly too large for me, clutching a lukewarm cup of coffee, while Marcus reviewed the documents I had printed from the secure link. He was a man of few words and sharp angles. He wore wire-rimmed glasses and a suit that looked like it had been tailored to withstand a hurricane. He did not offer sympathy. He offered strategy. "Here is the reality, Ms. Russell," Marcus said, placing the trust amendment on his desk. He smoothed the paper with a flat palm. "Trusts are private instruments. They are designed to keep affairs out of the public eye and out of probate court. That is their power. But it is also their weakness, because they operate in the dark. People often get sloppy with the mechanics." "Sloppy how?" I asked. "Formalities," he said. "A trust amendment is not just a letter you type up and sign. It requires specific validation, notarization, witnessing, competency. If your father is claiming you have been estranged for years to justify disinheriting you, he is building a narrative, but narratives have to match the paperwork." He tapped the signature page. "This amendment was signed on November 15th, he said. "Do you see the notary stamp?" I leaned in. It was a standard black stamp, the kind you could see on any mortgage document or vehicle title. "It looks normal," I said. "It is," Marcus agreed. "But look at the venue. Your father's primary attorney is downtown. This notary commission belongs to a distinct individual who does not work for that firm. Why would a man who is obsessed with control and uses a high-end firm for everything suddenly go elsewhere to sign the most important amendment of the year?" "I do not know," I said. "We find out," Marcus said. "We do not need a judge for this part. We need a timeline. You have the right to request the full trust accounting as a beneficiary, even a former one. If we are contesting the validity of the change, we are going to ask for the trust records, the notarization logs, and the filing history. Will they give them to us?" I asked. "They will resist," Marcus said. "They will stall. But while they are stalling, You are going to go to the county recorder's office. Why? Because real estate is never private, he said. Leaning back, if they are selling the cottage to fund this charity announcement, there will be a paper trail, deeds, liens, transfers. Go see what has been filed against the property in the last 6 months. Look for anything that does not fit the story. I left his office with a list of instructions and a strange sense of calm. For the first time since Christmas dinner, I was not reacting. I was hunting. The county recorder's office was located in the basement of the municipal building, a windowless room bathed in the humming buzz of fluorescent lights. It smelled of dust and bureaucracy. I took a number and waited until a clerk with kind eyes and tired shoulders waved me over to a computer terminal. I need to look up a property history, I said. 404 Maple Lane. You can search by address right there, she said, pointing to the keyboard. Print whatever you need, 25 cents a page. I sat down and typed in the address. The screen flickered and populated a list of filings going back 40 years. I saw the original deed from when my grandmother bought the cottage. I saw the transfer into the trust after she passed away. I saw the property tax assessments. And then I saw the recent activity. My heart gave a hard, singular thump against my ribs. There was a filing from October. 2 months ago, it was a quitclaim deed. A quitclaim deed is a fast, dirty way to transfer property. It offers no guarantees, no title insurance. It just says, I am giving you whatever interest I have in this land. I clicked on the document image. The deed transferred the property from the Eleanor Russell Living Trust to a holding company I had never heard of, Maple Legacy Holdings, LLC. The signatory for the trust was my father, but that was not the surprise. I scrolled down to the bottom of the page, past the legal descriptions. To the notary block, the stamp was there, the same name Marcus had pointed out on the trust amendment, Sarah Jenkins, Notary Public. But under her signature, there was a handwritten address for her commission, the Pack and Ship Store, 1255 Industrial Way. I stared at the screen. My father, a man who wore Italian loafers and refused to drink wine that cost less than $50 a bottle, had gone to a shipping store in a strip mall on the industrial side of town to sign over the family cottage. Why? Why avoid his expensive lawyers? I hit the print button, then I noticed one more filing. Dated just 2 weeks ago. Notice of lien. I clicked it. A contractor, a roofing company, had filed a mechanic's lien against the property for unpaid work, totaling $12,000. I frowned. My father prided himself on paying bills immediately. He called debt a moral failing. Why would he let a roofing bill go to a lien unless he didn't know about it? Or unless the money that was supposed to pay for the roof had gone somewhere else? I printed that document too. I paid the clerk $3.50 in quarters and walked out into the cold afternoon air. The Pack and Ship Store was wedged between a discount mattress outlet and a vape shop. The windows were plastered with posters advertising international shipping rates and passport photos. A bell jingled cheerfully when I pushed the door open. The air inside was warm and smelled of cardboard and packing tape. A young man with headphones around his neck was taping up a box behind the counter. "Help you?" he asked, not looking up. "Hi," I said, putting on my most non-threatening, confused suburban mom voice. "I am actually looking for a notary. Is Sarah Jenkins here?" The boy looked up then. He blinked. "Sarah. She only works Tuesdays and Thursdays, and Saturday mornings." "Oh, shoot," I said. "I must have missed her. I had a quick question about a document she notarized for my father a while back. We are just trying to clear up a date for our taxes." "I can't really look up customer stuff," the boy said, shifting his weight. "Privacy rules." "Of course," I said. "I totally understand. I definitely do not want to see anyone else's info. I just wanted to confirm if she was working on... Let me see." I pulled the printed deed from my purse. October 14th. It was a Friday. The boy glanced at a calendar tacked to the wall behind him. Yeah. Fridays are usually the manager, but Sarah covered a shift in October because the manager had knee surgery. Let me check the schedule binder." He pulled a tattered 3-ring binder from under the counter and flipped through it. "Yeah," he said. Sarah was here October 14th. Opened and closed, 9 to 6. That is great, I said. My dad thinks he came in around 2 o'clock. Does she usually take a lunch? She eats in the back, the boy said. We have cameras, so if nobody is at the counter, she comes out. Cameras? I asked. My pulse quickened. Yeah, boss is paranoid about package theft, he said, gesturing to a dome camera in the corner of the ceiling. Records everything. Keeps it on the cloud for 90 days or something. 90 days. October 14th was roughly 70 days ago. The footage still existed. That is good to know, I said, smiling. I will come back when Sarah is here. You have been so helpful. Thank you. No problem, he said, going back to his box. I walked out of the store, my knees feeling a little weak. I had confirmation. My father had come here, to this nondescript shipping store, to sign away the property, and there was a digital witness sitting on a server somewhere. If my father had signed that deed under duress, or if he hadn't been the one to sign it at all, or if someone else had been with him guiding his hand, the camera would know. By the time I got back to the apartment, the sun was setting, casting long purple shadows across the snow. I felt like I had been in a spy movie. But reality crashed back in the moment I checked my phone. It had started. The notifications were piling up like snowdrifts. Aunt Linda Piper. Honey, I am hearing some very concerning things. Your mother says you are threatening legal action. Please, think about what you are doing. Grief makes us do crazy things. Cousin Mike. Hey Piper, just heard you're going after the trust. Not cool. Mom says you're spiraling. Maybe take a break. Great Aunt Clara. We are praying for your healing. Bitterness is a poison. Dear, your parents only want peace. I scrolled through the messages, a sick feeling churning in my stomach. The phrasing was identical. Healing, spiraling, peace, concern. It was a script. My mother had not just vented to the family, she had mobilized them. She had painted a picture of me as the unstable, greedy daughter who was lashing out because she had been asked to leave dinner. She was inoculating the family against the truth before I could even speak it. Mom. I looked up. Leo was standing in the doorway of his bedroom, holding his stuffed penguin. Hey, buddy, I said, shoving the phone into my pocket. What is up? Is Grandma mad at me? He asked. The question broke my heart into 1,000 jagged pieces. I crossed the room in 2 strides and scooped him up, sitting on the edge of his bed. No, I said firmly. Grandma is not mad at you. Nobody is mad at you. Remember what I said? The adults are just having some big feelings right now. Sometimes, when adults have big feelings, they need a timeout, just like you do when you get frustrated with your Legos. So they are in timeout, he asked. Sort of. I said, we are giving them space, and while they are having their space, we are going to have our own fun. Like what? Like a play date, I said. I already texted Mrs. Gable. Her grandson is visiting tomorrow. We are going to the trampoline park. The one with the foam pit. Leo's eyes widened. The very same, I said. Now, go brush your teeth. We have jumping to do tomorrow. He ran off to the bathroom, the worry temporarily erased from his face. I listened to the water running, reminding myself that this was the most important job. I could not stop my parents from lying about me, but I could stop their poison from reaching him. My phone buzzed again. I braced myself for another lecture from a distant relative, but the name on the screen made me pause. Chloe TikTok cousin. It was a direct message on Instagram. Hey Piper, I am so sorry about the other night. I didn't realize how heavy it was getting until I watched the footage back. I feel like total trash for filming it. I thought it was just, family content. I stared at the message. Chloe was 20. She lived her life online. She didn't have the same malicious filter as the older generation. I typed back, "It is okay." "Chloe, you didn't know," she replied instantly. "It wasn't okay. The way Uncle Richard talked to you, it was scary. He sounded like a robot. Do you want the clip? I haven't posted it, obviously." But I didn't want to delete it if you needed it for, I don't know, proof. Yes, I typed. Please send it. A moment later, a video file appeared in the chat. I went into the bathroom and locked the door so Leo wouldn't hear. I turned the volume down low and pressed play. The video was shaky at first, focused on the centerpiece, then it panned up. The audio was crisp. Chloe must have been sitting close to my father. I saw my father's face. He wasn't red. He wasn't shouting. He looked calm, almost bored. He was cutting a piece of steak. "Your mother and I have made a decision," his voice said from the tiny speaker. I watched the camera pan to me. I looked terrified. I looked small. "We are establishing a boundary." He continued. "It is not up for discussion. It is a decision we have made for the greater good. Leave and never return." I watched it 3 times. It wasn't an argument. It was an eviction. He delivered the lines with the cadence of a prepared statement. He didn't stutter. He didn't look for words. He knew exactly what he was going to say before the soup was even served. The dinner had been a trap. They had invited me solely to kick me out in front of witnesses, establishing the estrangement timeline perfectly to match the backdated documents they were forging. I saved the video to my phone and then backed it up to the cloud. "Thank you, Chloe," I whispered. The next morning, I forwarded the video and the photos of the documents to Marcus. 2 days later, on December 29th, Marcus fired the first shot. He sent a formal demand letter to my father, the trust's attorney, and the escrow company handling the cottage sale. The letter was polite but lethal. It stated that I, Piper Russell, contested the validity of the trust amendment, asserted my status as a beneficiary, and demanded an immediate hold on any sale of trust assets pending a full forensic accounting. The reaction was instantaneous. My phone did not ring. My mother did not text. Instead, I received an email from my father's high-powered attorney, a man named Sterling. Subject: cease and desist / harassment, Miss Russell. Your recent correspondence is viewed as a direct act of harassment against your parents during a sensitive family time. The amendment to the trust is valid and was executed in accordance with your father's wishes. Your attempts to sabotage the sale of the Maple Lane property are tortious interference. Be advised that if you do not withdraw your baseless claims, we will seek damages and a restraining order to protect your parents from further emotional distress. It was a lot of scary words designed to make me shut up. But Marcus called me 10 minutes later. "They are panicking," Marcus said. He sounded pleased. "It sounds like they are going to sue me," I said. "Lawyers do not threaten restraining orders in a business dispute unless they have no actual defense," Marcus said. "They are trying to scare you off because the closing is in 2 days. If we spook the title company, the deal dies. And if the deal dies, they don't get the cash for the charity announcement. So we keep pushing." "We keep pushing," Marcus said. "I am subpoenaing the notary journal today." I hung up, feeling a strange mix of adrenaline and nausea. An hour later, there was a knock at my door. I looked through the peephole. It was a courier. I opened the door. He handed me a thick, padded envelope. "Delivery for Piper Russell." "Thank you," I said. I took the package into the kitchen. There was no return address, but the handwriting on the front was familiar. It was my mother's jagged, loopy script. I tore it open. Inside was a stack of photocopied papers and a sticky note. The note read, "Since you want to talk about money, let us talk about what you owe us." I frowned. I didn't owe them a dime. I had paid for my own car, my own college tuition, my own apartment. I had never taken a loan from them. I leafed through the papers. They were receipts. January 2018, family support, $5,000. March 2019, legal aid for Piper, $7,500. June 2020, emergency loan, $10,000. I stared at the numbers. They were insane. Legal aid. I had never been to court. Emergency loan. In June 2020, I was working remotely and saving money because of the lockdown. I hadn't asked them for anything. Then I looked closer at the proof. There was a photocopy of a check. It was made out to Piper Russell. The signature on the back, the endorsement, looked like my signature. It had the loop on the P and the sharp slant, but I had never seen this check. I looked at the deposit stamp on the back of the check. Deposited to account ending in 8842, First National Bank. I froze. I did not bank at First National. I had been with a credit union since I was 18. I had never had an account at First National. I flipped to the next page. Another check, another endorsement that looked just like mine. Another deposit to the same mysterious account ending in 8842. I sat down hard on the kitchen chair. The room spun. They weren't just creating fake receipts to guilt-trip me. These were real canceled checks. Someone had opened a bank account in my name. Someone had been writing checks from the family trust or the business account, making them out to me, forging my signature to endorse them, and then depositing them into this secret account. They were funneling money. They were moving cash out of their estate, marking it as gifts or support to me to avoid taxes or hide assets, and then keeping the money in an account they controlled, but that had my name on it. If the IRS ever looked, it would look like I had received tens of thousands of dollars. If a judge looked, it would look like I was a leech who had drained them dry and was now asking for more. My mother's note, "Let us talk about what you owe us," wasn't a complaint. It was a threat. She was telling me, "We have the paper trail to prove you are the thief." I felt a wave of cold sweat break out on my forehead. This was not just a family dispute anymore. This was a felony. I grabbed my phone and dialed Marcus. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely hit the buttons. "Marcus," I said when he answered, "do not just subpoena the notary." "What is it?" he asked, hearing the terror in my voice. "Subpoena First National Bank," I said. "They stole my name." I looked at the stack of papers. The date on the most recent check was just last month. While I was buying discount winter boots for Leo and budgeting for a Christmas tree, they were laundering $10,000 through a ghost version of me. "And Marcus," I said, my voice hardening into something unrecognizable. "Yes. Get the police records too," I said, "because I am going to report a fraud." The silence on the other end was heavy. "Are you sure?" Marcus asked. "Once you ring that bell, you cannot unring it. This goes from civil to criminal. It will destroy them." I looked at Leo's drawing on the fridge. It was a picture of us, stick figures holding hands under a giant sun. They had tried to take his home. They had tried to steal his mother's reputation. They had set me up to take the fall for their financial crimes. "They told me to leave and never return," I said. "I am just following instructions. I am not coming back, but I am sending the truth in my place." "Okay," Marcus said. "I will draft the affidavit." I hung up the phone. The house was quiet. The snow outside was beautiful and white and cold. I placed the stack of forged checks on the table and smoothed them out. They wanted a villain fine. I would be the villain who burned their house of cards to the ground. The phone in my hand felt heavy, like a stone I had picked up and now had to throw through a glass window. Marcus Thorne was on the other end of the line, his voice calm and terrifyingly professional. He had just outlined the next logical step in our defense, and it was a step that led away from civil court and toward something much darker. "You have the copies of the checks," Marcus said. "You have the deposit slips to an account that is not yours. Piper, this is not just a family dispute anymore. This is identity theft. This is bank fraud. If we want to stop the sale of the cottage and freeze the trust, we have to file a formal fraud inquiry with the bank. We have to go on record stating that those signatures are forgeries." I stood in my kitchen, looking out at the snow-covered parking lot. The world looked clean and white, but I felt covered in grime. "If I file a fraud inquiry," I said, my voice quiet, "what happens to them?" "The bank investigates," Marcus said. "They will flag the account. They will contact the account holders, your parents, and demand an explanation. If the bank determines the funds were obtained fraudulently, they are required by law to file a suspicious activity report with the federal government. It could lead to criminal charges." I closed my eyes. I saw my father standing at the head of the Christmas table, carving the roast. I saw my mother arranging the flowers. They were cruel. Yes, they were manipulative. But jail. Was I ready to be the daughter who sent her parents to prison? I just want them to stop, I said. I just want my name off their lies. I want my son's future secure. They will not stop because you asked them nicely, Marcus said. They did not stop when they kicked you out. They did not stop when they cut you out of the trust. They escalated. They stole your identity to launder money. You are not the one escalating. Piper, you are the one putting up the shield. But a shield only works if it is solid. You have to choose stability for your son, or fear of upsetting the people who are robbing you. Stability over fear. I looked at the drawing my son had made on the refrigerator. It was a picture of a house with a chimney and a big yellow sun. It was the home he deserved. Do it, I said. File the inquiry. Good, Marcus said. But first, I need you to go to your own bank. Sit down with a manager. Have them review the signatures on those copies against your actual signature on file. We need an independent verification that those endorsements are fake before we pull the trigger. I will go today, I said. I walked into my branch of the credit union an hour later. It was quiet. The post-Christmas lull leaving the lobby empty except for a few tellers counting cash in their drawers. I asked to see the branch manager, a woman named Mrs. Higgins, whom I had known for years. She was a kind, grandmotherly woman who always gave my son a lollipop when we came in to deposit checks. Today, there were no lollipops. We sat in her glass-walled office. I laid the photocopies of the checks my mother had sent me onto her desk. Then, I signed my name on a blank piece of paper 3 times. Mrs. Higgins put on her reading glasses. She adjusted the desk lamp. She took a magnifying glass from her drawer and leaned over the papers. The silence in the room was thick, broken only by the hum of the ventilation system. Well, she said finally, sitting back, these are not good forgeries. Piper, they are not, I asked. Look here, she said, pointing to the photocopy with a manicured nail. See the loop on the capital P? You loop yours from the bottom up. This person loops from the top down, and the slant is wrong. Your handwriting slants to the right, consistent with a right-handed writer moving quickly. This signature is upright, almost backward. It looks like someone trying to copy a style but drawing it slowly. My mother, I said. It was a guess, but I knew it was true. My mother had always prided herself on her penmanship. Also, Mrs. Higgins said, her face serious. The dates are inconsistent. This check is dated for a Sunday. Banks do not process checks on Sundays, and this deposit stamp. It is from an ATM transaction. If you were depositing a check for $10,000, you would likely come inside or use a mobile deposit. You wouldn't shove it into a machine at 2 a.m. She looked at me, her eyes full of concern. Piper, who did this? My parents, I said. The words tasted like ash. Mrs. Higgins frowned, a deep crease appearing between her eyebrows. I am so sorry. You need to lock everything down. Right now. What do you mean? If they are willing to forge a check, she said. They likely have your social security number. They have your birth date. They could open anything. Credit cards, loans, utilities. How do I check? I asked. I check my credit report once a year. Gee, check it now, she said. She turned her monitor so I could see. I can pull a soft inquiry right here. It will not hurt your score. I nodded. She typed in my information. The screen loaded. A spinning wheel of doom. Then, the report popped up. Green check marks for my car loan. Green check marks for my student loans. Green check marks for my primary credit card. And then, a red flag. Open account Visa Platinum. Opened August 14th of this year. Balance, $2,400. Status active, /minimum payment due. I stared at the screen. I do not have a Visa Platinum. Mrs. Higgins clicked on the details. It is registered to an address on Chestnut Street. I gasped. That was my apartment in college. I haven't lived there in 11 years. They used an old address so you wouldn't get the statements. Mrs. Higgins said. But they are paying just enough to keep it from going to collections. But carrying a high balance, it drags your score down. It makes you look irresponsible, I finished. It makes me look like I am living beyond my means. It was a setup. They weren't just stealing money. They were crafting a dossier. If I ever tried to fight them for custody or for the trust, they could pull this credit report and say, "Look, Piper is drowning in debt. She is unstable. She can't manage her own life, let alone a large inheritance." "Freeze it," I said. "Freeze everything. Put a fraud alert on all 3 bureaus." "I am doing it right now," Mrs. Higgins said, her fingers flying across the keyboard. "And Piper, you need to call whoever else might be involved, if they have your information. Nobody is safe." I sat in my car in the credit union parking lot. The heater was blasting, but I was shivering. Casey, my sibling, had been the one to mention protecting the family assets. Casey had been the one who seemed terrified on the phone. I dialed Casey's number. It rang 4 times. I thought it would go to voicemail, but then there was a click. "What do you want? Piper?" Casey's voice was defensive, brittle. "Mom says I shouldn't talk to you. I am not calling to fight." "Casey," I said. I kept my voice low, gentle. I needed to reach the person under the programming. "I am calling because I am at the bank. I just found a credit card opened in my name that I didn't open, and checks endorsed with my signature that I never signed." Silence on the line. "Casey," I said, "I need you to be honest with me. Did you open anything in my name?" "I didn't mean to," Casey stammered. The defiance vanished, replaced by the trembling tone of a child caught in a lie. "Did you sign my name?" I asked. "It is okay. Just tell me." "Mom and Dad brought me the papers," Casey said, the words rushing out in a sob. "They said it was for the refinancing. They said the cottage needed repairs before the sale, and because your name was still on the old deed, they needed your signature to get the loan. They said you were being difficult, that you wouldn't answer their calls, and that if we didn't get the money, the roof would collapse. So you signed for me." "They told me to," Casey cried. Dad stood right there. He said, "Just do a signature like Piper's. It is a technicality. We are helping her." He said it was to protect your credit score because you were broke. "I am not broke." "Casey," I said firmly, "I have a job. I have savings. They lied to you. They said if we sold the cottage, there would be enough money for the family foundation," Casey said, "and that the foundation would pay off my student loans. They promised me, Piper, they said my debt would be gone, but only if the sale went through smoothly. They said you were trying to block it because you were jealous." I closed my eyes, leaning my head against the steering wheel. It was so simple and so evil. They had bought Casey's loyalty with the promise of debt relief, funded by the very asset they were stealing from me. They had made Casey a criminal to save a few $1,000s. "Casey, listen to me," I said. "This is important. Did you sign the trust amendment too? The one that cuts me out?" "I witnessed it," Casey whispered. "Dad made me sign as the witness. But he backdated it. We signed it last week, but he wrote November on it." "Okay," I said. "You did the right thing by telling me. Are you okay?" "I feel sick," Casey said. "Piper, am I going to go to jail?" "Not if you help me fix it," I said. "You are a victim here too. But you have to stop signing things. Do not sign one more piece of paper. If they put a document in front of you, you walk away. Can you do that?" "I think so," Casey said. "Mom is she is so intense right now. She keeps crying about how you are ruining Christmas." "I am not ruining Christmas," I said. "I am stopping a crime. I love you. Casey, stay safe." I hung up. I had the confirmation. Casey was the loose end. My parents had overplayed their hand by involving the weak link. I drove straight to Marcus's office. I didn't call ahead. I walked in, my face numb from the cold, and told the receptionist I had new evidence. Marcus came out to the lobby, took one look at me, and waved me into his office. The sibling confessed, I said, sitting down. Casey signed the checks. Casey witnessed the trust amendment, and they backdated it. Marcus nodded slowly, taking notes on a yellow legal pad. That helps. It establishes a pattern of coercion, but we need hard evidence of the forgery that doesn't rely on your sibling's testimony. We don't want to put Casey on the stand if we can avoid it. That destroys the relationship forever. I agree, I said. I want to protect Casey. Then look at this, Marcus said. He turned his laptop screen toward me. It was the notary log he had requested, or rather, the lack of one. We sent the demand to the notary, Sarah Jenkins, Marcus said, asking for her journal entry for the day the trust amendment was signed. In this state, a notary is required by law to keep a sequential journal of all official acts. If she notarized your father's signature, it has to be in the book. And she refused to produce it, Marcus said. She claimed it was privileged, which is a lie. Notary journals are public records. So what did you do? I sent a formal complaint to the Secretary of State's office, Marcus said, a small, shark-like smile touching his lips. And I did a little background check on the witnesses listed on the other documents. He pulled up a document on the screen. It was a marriage certificate. Groom Robert Jenkins, bride Sarah Miller. Sarah Miller is Sarah Jenkins, Marcus said. The notary. Okay, I said. Now look at the witness signature on the trust amendment, he said. I looked. The signature, scrawled in blue ink, read Robert Jenkins. Her husband, I said. Exactly, Marcus said. A notary cannot notarize a document where they have a direct financial or beneficial interest, or where a spouse is a party. While using a spouse as a witness isn't strictly illegal in every context, it is highly irregular and creates a massive conflict of interest, especially if the notary is claiming to be an impartial third party. It smells like collusion. So the notary is dirty, I said. The notary is a friend of the family, Marcus corrected. Or someone they paid off, and she is panicking. Look at her license status. He refreshed the Secretary of State's website. License status, under review. She knows she is caught, Marcus said. She is likely calling your father right now, screaming at him to fix this. Good, I said. Let them scream. The screaming happened quickly, but not in the way I expected. That evening, as I was making dinner for Leo macaroni and cheese with hot dogs cut up in it, his favorite, my phone rang. It was my father. I stared at the screen. I hadn't spoken to him since he told me to leave and never return. I let it go to voicemail. Then my mother called. Then the house line called. Finally, a text message arrived from my father. Piper, we need to resolve this. It has gone too far. Meet us for lunch tomorrow at the garden room. Just the three of us. We can work out a settlement that works for everyone. Noon, the garden room. It was a fancy restaurant with white tablecloths and waiters in tuxedos. It was a public place, a neutral ground. I showed the text to Marcus. Reply with this, Marcus instructed. I typed the words carefully. I am willing to meet. However, given the legal nature of the dispute, my attorney, Marcus Thorne, will accompany me. We can meet at his office instead. I hit send. I watched the three little dots appear, then disappear, then appear again. They were arguing. They were trying to figure out how to corner me. The reply came 2 minutes later. This is a family matter. We do not need lawyers involved. If you cannot meet us alone to heal this family, then there is no point in meeting. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. They canceled. I told Marcus. Of course they did, Marcus said. They didn't want a settlement. They wanted a surrender. They wanted to get you in a room, guilt trip you, threaten you, maybe offer you a small check to sign a waiver, and make the problem go away. Bringing a lawyer means they have to tell the truth. They can't afford the truth. So what now? I asked. Now we prepare for the endgame, Marcus said. The sale closing is scheduled for December 31st. That is 2 days away. The charity gala is the night of January 2nd. We are going to stop them before they can cut the ribbon. Later that night, the emotional fallout arrived. I was tucking Leo into bed. He was sleepy and warm. smelling of baby shampoo. "Mom," he asked, "is Christmas over forever?" "No, baby," I said, kissing his cheek. "Christmas comes back every year, and the spirit of it being kind, being brave that stays all year long." "I like being brave," he whispered. "You are the bravest," I said. I went back to the living room and sat in the dark, watching the snow fall outside the window. My phone buzzed again. It was my mother. "You are doing this to your child. Piper, imagine what people will think when they find out you sued your own parents. You are dragging our name through the mud. You are selfish. We gave you everything, and this is how you repay us. By destroying our legacy, you are cutting Leo off from the only family he has." The words were designed to hurt. They were laser-guided missiles aimed at my deepest insecurities. Selfish, bad mother, ungrateful. For a moment, I felt the old shame rising up, the urge to apologize, the urge to fix it. But then I thought about the credit card in my name. I thought about Casey, weeping on the phone because they had forced him to commit forgery. I thought about the lie they told the world that I was the one who left. They didn't care about Leo. They cared about the family name. They cared about the legacy they could print on a plaque at a hospital. I picked up the phone. My fingers were steady. I typed one sentence. "My child will grow up with truth, not fear." I hit send. Then I blocked her number. I blocked my father's number. I sat in the silence, and for the first time in my life, I didn't feel lonely. I felt clean. I stood up and went to the kitchen table. I had work to do. I took out a fresh red folder. I began to organize the evidence. Tab 1, the dinner, the video clip from Chloe. The timestamp showing the exact moment of the exile. Tab 2, the trust. The original document showing my 30%, the forged amendment, the affidavit from Marcus regarding the notary's conflict of interest. Tab 3, the property, the quitclaim deed signed at the shipping store, the mechanic's lien showing unpaid bills. Tab 4, the fraud, the copies of the forged checks, the credit report showing the secret Visa account, the fraud inquiry number from the bank. Tab 5, the timeline, a clear, typed chronology of events, matching every lie to a document that disproved it. I labeled the folder, "The Truth." I was not going to scream. I was not going to make a scene at the gala. I was not going to be the crazy daughter. I was going to be the calmest person in the room. I was going to be a librarian of their destruction. I looked at the calendar, December 30th, 2 days until the New Year, 2 days until the closing, 3 days until the gala. The storm was outside, but inside, I was ready. I turned off the kitchen light and went to sleep, dreaming of a house that belonged to me, paid for with honesty, where the locks were on the inside and I held the only key. The local newspaper landed on my doorstep on the morning of December 31st with a heavy thud. It was a special New Year's Eve edition. The front page dominated by a glossy photo of the town's community pillars. There they were, my parents. My father was wearing his tuxedo, one hand resting possessively on my mother's shoulder. My mother was draped in a silver gown, looking ethereal and benevolent. The headline read, "A legacy of giving, the Russell family pledges historic donation to St. Jude's Hospital Wing." I picked up the paper, my fingers numb from the morning frost, and carried it into the kitchen. I spread it out on the table next to my coffee. The article was a masterpiece of fiction. It described my parents as selfless champions of the community, detailing their plan to donate the entire proceeds of a historic family property sale to fund a new pediatric wing. It mentioned the gala scheduled for January 2nd, where they would be the guests of honor and present the check. The community saw saints. I saw thieves. They were selling my grandmother's cottage, my inheritance, my son's security to buy a standing ovation, and they were rushing the closing for today, December 31st, so they could walk onto that stage 48 hours later with the money in hand. My phone rang. It was Marcus Thorne. "Did you see the paper?" he asked. "I am looking at it right now." I said, "They look very happy." "They look expensive," Marcus corrected. "But appearances can be deceiving. Piper, We have a choice to make today. The closing is scheduled for 2 o'clock this afternoon. If that sale goes through, the money vanishes into their accounts, and it becomes 10 times harder to get it back. We have to stop the transaction." "I am ready," I said. "Do I go to the escrow office? Do I go to the gala?" "No," Marcus said firmly. "You do not go anywhere near that gala. If you storm in there and cause a scene, they will spin it. They will say you are the unstable, estranged daughter crashing their moment of glory. You will look like the villain, and they will look like the martyrs. We do not want drama. We want deadlock." "So how do we stop it?" "We use the pen," Marcus said. "We send a formal notice to the escrow officer, the title company, and the legal counsel for the charity board. We inform them that there is a clouded title and a pending fraud investigation regarding the beneficiary consent. No title company in the world will insure a property with an active fraud claim attached to it. They will freeze the deal to protect themselves." "It feels quiet," I said. "It is," Marcus said. "It is the difference between a grenade and a sniper rifle. We are not trying to blow up the building. We are just taking out the lock on the door." I sat down at my laptop. Marcus had drafted the language. It was concise, professional, and devoid of emotion. "To whom it may concern, please be advised that there are material discrepancies regarding the beneficiary consent and notarization related to the sale of the property at 404 Maple Lane. A formal inquiry regarding potential forgery and identity theft has been filed with the financial institutions involved. Any transfer of title proceeding without the verified consent of all beneficiaries, including Piper Russell, is contested. Please preserve all records." I typed in the email addresses: the escrow officer, the head of the charity board, the partner at my father's law firm. I hovered my finger over the enter key. This was it. Once I sent this, I was officially declaring war on my parents' reputation. I was stripping away the mask they had worn for 30 years. I looked at Leo, who was sitting on the floor watching cartoons, eating dry cereal out of a bag because I hadn't gone grocery shopping. "For you, kid," I whispered. I pressed send. The reaction was not immediate, which made it worse. The morning dragged on. I cleaned the apartment. I did 3 loads of laundry. I checked my email every 5 minutes. At 11 o'clock, a reply came from the escrow officer. "Jennifer Miller. Dear Ms. Russell, receipt acknowledged. In light of the contested beneficiary status and the allegations raised, the transaction has been placed on an immediate administrative hold pending legal review. We have notified the sellers that the closing scheduled for today cannot proceed." Panic disguised as politeness. She was washing her hands of it. She didn't want to be sued. The sale was dead. The silence broke 20 minutes later. My phone began to vibrate on the table. It was my father. I let it ring. Then my mother. I let it ring. Then the house line. Then my father's cell again. They were not calling to negotiate. They were calling because the ground had just opened up beneath their feet. They had probably just received the call from escrow saying the money wasn't coming. The check they planned to present at the gala was now just a worthless piece of paper. I put my phone on Do Not Disturb and took Leo to the park. We built a snowman. We made snow angels. I breathed in the cold, clean air, feeling lighter than I had in years. I was not the scared little girl waiting for their approval anymore. I was the wall they had crashed into. When we got home later that afternoon, I made Leo a snack and went into my bedroom to listen to the voicemails. There were 6. The first was from my father. His voice was tight, controlled, but shaking with suppressed rage. "Piper, you have no idea what you have done. You have interfered with a charitable act. You have embarrassed this family in front of our professional partners. Call me immediately and rescind that email, or I will not be responsible for the consequences." The second was from my mother. She wasn't controlling her rage. She was weeping. But it wasn't the sad weeping of a hurt mother. It was the hysterical, victimized weeping of a narcissist who had been denied her spotlight. "You are ruining Christmas. Piper, you are ruining everything. We have the gala in 2 days. What are we supposed to tell the board that our daughter is a liar? You are doing this out of spite because we asked you to leave dinner. You are petty and jealous. You are ruining Casey's future. That money was for the family foundation. How can you be so selfish? The third was my father again. We know about your financial situation, Piper. We know about the debts. Do not think we won't release that information if you push this. We are trying to protect you, but you are making it impossible. Withdraw the claim. I listened to them all. Not once did they ask how I was. Not once did they deny the forgery. They only talked about the gala, the reputation, the embarrassment. They didn't care that they had committed a crime. They only cared that they had been caught. The threats about my debts chilled me. They were referring to the credit card they had opened in my name. They were threatening to expose the very fraud they had committed, framing it as my failure. I saved the voicemails. I backed them up to the cloud. Then, there was a knock at the door. I froze. Had they come here? I walked to the door and looked through the peephole. It wasn't my parents. It was Casey. My sibling looked terrible. Casey was wearing a coat that looked too thin for the weather, shivering, with red-rimmed eyes and hair that hadn't been brushed. I opened the door. "Piper," Casey croaked. "Come in," I said gently. Casey stepped inside and collapsed onto the entryway bench, burying their face in their hands. "They are going crazy," Casey sobbed. "Mom is throwing things. Dad is on the phone screaming at the lawyers. They said you killed the deal." I paused the deal, I said. "There is a difference." "They are blaming me," Casey whispered. "They said I must have talked. They said I am weak. They are threatening to cut me off. Piper, they said they are going to call the loan servicing company and cancel the payments for my school." I looked at my younger sibling. Casey was 29, but in that moment, looked about 12. This was how they controlled us. Money and fear. "Casey," I said, "I am going to make you some tea. Take off your coat. Go sit on the couch." I went to the kitchen and brewed a pot of strong tea. I found the package of cookies Leo liked. I brought a tray into the living room. Casey was sitting on the edge of the sofa, staring at the blank television screen. "Here," I said, handing Casey a mug. "Drink?" Casey took a sip, the steam rising around a pale face. "I didn't mean to mess everything up," Casey said. I believed them. They said it was just paperwork." "I know," I said. "I am not mad at you, Casey, but we are at a crossroads." I sat down on the chair opposite the sofa. I leaned forward, keeping my voice calm but firm. "The bank is investigating the checks," I said. "The escrow company has stopped the sale. This is not going away. It is going to get investigated. And when they investigate, they are going to look at every signature." Casey flinched. "I need you to understand something," I continued. "If you cover for them, if you lie to the investigators to protect them, you become a co-conspirator. You go down with them. But if you tell the truth, if you admit that you were pressured, that you didn't know what you were signing, that you were acting under duress, you are a victim. You are a witness." Casey looked up, tears streaming down. "But they are our parents. They are people who forged my signature and stole my identity," I said. "And they used you to do it. That is not parenting. That is racketeering." I took a breath. "You have a choice, Casey. You can tell the truth and save yourself. Or you can keep bleeding for them until there is nothing left of you. But I can't protect you if you lie." Casey stared into the tea. The silence stretched out, heavy and thick. "They had meetings," Casey whispered finally. "What meetings?" "With Jerry," Casey said. "The accountant. Jerry Vance," I asked. I remembered him. He was a slippery man with a comb-over who had been doing my father's taxes for 20 years. "Yeah," Casey said. "He came over a lot in November. They would go into the study and close the door. Dad would make me bring them coffee. But I wasn't allowed to stay. But one time I heard them laughing." "Laughing about what?" "About how easy it was," Casey said, the memory making their voice tremble. "Jerry said, if she never checks the mail, she effectively doesn't exist. And Dad said, She is too busy playing the victim to check the notices. I felt a cold spike of anger. They had mocked me while they robbed me. Did Jerry bring the documents? I asked. He brought everything, Casey said. He brought the stamp, too. The notary stamp? Yeah, Casey said. He had it in his briefcase. He said Sarah left it with him because she trusted him. This was huge. The notary wasn't just negligent. She had surrendered her seal to an accountant who was using it to forge documents in a private home. That was a felony for everyone involved. And the checks? I asked. Did Jerry handle those? I think so, Casey said. He told Mom that moving small amounts was better. Structuring, he called it. He said if they kept it under $10,000, the bank wouldn't flag it. Structuring. That was a federal crime. Okay, I said. Casey, this is good. You are remembering important things. We spent the next 2 hours reconstructing the timeline. Casey talked, and I wrote everything down. The dates of the meetings, the times Jerry was at the house, the specific promises my parents made about paying off the student loans in exchange for signatures. By the time we were done, we had a map of the conspiracy. It wasn't just a family spat. It was a calculated operation involving a corrupt accountant, a compromised notary, and 2 parents who viewed their children as assets to be liquidated. I texted the details to Marcus. 20 minutes later, Marcus called. I looked up Jerry Vance, Marcus said. He is not a CPA anymore. His license was revoked 3 years ago for gross negligence and record tampering. He is just a bookkeeper now, and he has a history. 2 civil suits for mishandling estate funds, no convictions, but he settled both quietly. So he is a fixer, I said. He is a fraudster for hire, Marcus said. And your parents hired him because a reputable accountant wouldn't touch this with a 10-foot pole. What about Casey? I asked. Casey admitted to witnessing the signatures. Is Casey liable? It is tricky, Marcus said. Technically, yes. But given the power dynamic, the financial dependence, and the coercion, we can paint Casey as a victim of financial abuse if Casey cooperates with the fraud inquiry. We can likely get immunity or a non-prosecution agreement, but Casey has to flip, officially. I looked at my sibling, who had fallen asleep on the couch, curled up in a fetal position. Casey will flip, I said. I will make sure of it. I hung up. I faced a moral crossroads. I could burn everything down. But the fire might catch Casey too. I had to thread a needle. I had to expose my parents and the accountant while shielding my sibling. I decided then I would not name Casey as a co-conspirator in my affidavit. I would name Casey as a witness to the coercion. I would frame the narrative. My parents were the architects. Casey was just another tool they used. The next day, New Year's Day, was quiet, the calm before the storm, but the silence was broken by an email from an unexpected source. It was from the legal counsel for the charity board, a man named Jonathan Eves. Ms. Russell, the board of directors has received your notice regarding the Maple Lane property. This is a matter of grave concern, as the anticipated donation was the cornerstone of our capital campaign. We have reached out to your parents for clarification, and they have vehemently denied your claims, stating that you are acting out of personal malice and that a document exists proving you disowned the family and waived all rights to the inheritance years ago. The board requests that you provide any substantiating evidence of your claims immediately. We wish to resolve this privately, but we cannot accept proceeds from a disputed asset. I stared at the screen. A document proving I disowned the family. I had never written such a document. I had never waived my inheritance. What are they talking about? I whispered. I opened the attachment included in the email. It was a PDF labeled Piper_waiver_2019.pdf. I opened it. It was a handwritten letter. The handwriting was a decent approximation of mine, better than the checks. To my parents. I want nothing from you. I am severing all ties. I do not want your money, your property, or your name. I waive any claim to Grandma's estate. I would rather drown in the ocean than take a penny from people who suffocated me. Signed, Piper Russell. June 4th, 2019. I felt the blood drain from my face. I would rather drown in the ocean than take a penny from people who suffocated me. It was a poetic line, a dramatic line, and it was a line I had said, but I hadn't written it in a letter to them. I had said it in a therapy session when I was 25, dealing with the trauma of their controlling behavior. I had written it in a private journal that I kept during that time, a journal I had left in my old bedroom when I moved out, hidden in a box of college textbooks. They hadn't just forged a waiver, they had raided my old room, found my private therapy journal, stolen my most vulnerable, angry thoughts, and pasted them into a fake legal document to use against me. They weaponized my healing. They took the words I used to survive them and turned them into a weapon to disinherit me. I felt a wave of nausea so strong I had to grip the table. It was a violation deeper than the money. It was spiritual theft. I called Marcus. My voice was ice. They sent a fake waiver, I said, to the charity board. Let me see it, Marcus said. I forwarded it. Piper, Marcus said after a moment. This is dated June 2019, but look at the letterhead it is written on. Do you see the watermark at the bottom? I zoomed in. It was faint, but it was there, a tiny logo for a paper company. Yes, I said. That paper company rebranded in 2021, Marcus said. I know because my firm uses them. That logo didn't exist in 2019. They wrote it on new paper and backdated it, I said. They are sloppy, Marcus said. They are desperate, and they are sloppy. They just handed us the smoking gun. They submitted a forged document to a third party, the charity board, to justify a financial transaction. That is wire fraud. That is evidence. They used my diary, I said, my voice shaking. They stole words from my diary. Then we will make them eat those words, Marcus said. Prepare your statement for the board. Stick to the facts. Point out the watermark. Point out the signature discrepancy. Do not get emotional about the diary. Just show them it is a fake. I spent the next hour drafting my response. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I was a surgeon cutting out a tumor. Dear Mr. Eves, the document provided by my parents is a forgery. Please find attached a forensic analysis of the stationary watermark, which postdates the alleged date of signature by 2 years. Furthermore, I have never waived my rights to the trust. The content of the letter appears to be plagiarized from private personal journals stolen from my former residence. Please regard this as further evidence of the fraudulent scheme attempting to be perpetrated against your organization. Respectfully, Piper Russell. I attach the proofs. I attach the bank inquiry number. I attach the affidavit regarding the notary. I sent it. The charity board now had proof that their pillars of kindness were liars, thieves, and forgers. The evening of January 1st arrived. The gala was tomorrow night. The house was quiet. Casey had gone to stay with a friend. Terrified that our parents would come to my apartment, I had changed the locks just in case. I sat in the living room, looking at the folder of evidence, the truth folder. They were going to lose the gala. The charity board would have to cancel the recognition. The escrow was dead. My parents were cornered, and cornered animals bite. My phone buzzed. A text from Aunt Linda. They are saying you faked the letter. Piper. They are saying you are trying to frame them. Your father is talking about suing you for defamation. He says he is going to destroy you at the gala if you don't stop. He won't have a chance, I whispered. I wasn't going to let him destroy me. I wasn't going to let him spin the narrative. I wasn't going to crash the gala. But I wasn't going to be invisible, either. I called Marcus. Is it legal for me to attend the gala? I asked. It is a ticketed event, Marcus said. If you buy a ticket, you can go, but I strongly advise against it. I am not buying a ticket, I said. Mr. Eves, the board counsel, invited me. He what? He emailed me 10 minutes ago, I said. He wants to meet me before the event, to verify the originals of the documents I sent. He asked if I could come to the venue early. It is a trap, Marcus said. Or it is an opportunity. He said I could bring counsel, I said. Then I am coming, Marcus said. We go in, we show the papers, we leave. We do not stay for the speeches. Agreed, I said. I hung up. I looked at the dress hanging in the back of my closet. It was a simple black dress I had worn to a funeral 2 years ago. It was fitting. Because tomorrow night, I was going to a funeral. I was going to bury the myth of the perfect Russell family. I went into Leo's room. He was sleeping soundly, clutching his teddy bear. The safety of his world depended on me holding the line. Truth, not fear, I whispered. I went to sleep. The nightmare was almost over. The ending was written in the watermarks and the timestamps. All that was left was to turn the page. The grand ballroom of the historic downtown hotel was a cavern of gold leaf and crystal. It smelled of expensive perfume, prime rib, and the specific, metallic scent of money changing hands. I stood in the shadows near the rear exit, my hands clasped tightly in front of me, watching the spectacle of my own erasure. Marcus Thorne stood beside me. He looked less like a lawyer and more like a bodyguard, his presence a silent wall between me and the people who had raised me. Remember, Marcus said, his voice a low rumble under the swell of the string quartet. We are not here to make a scene. We are here because the board requested our presence. We are a precaution. I know, I said. My voice sounded hollow to my own ears. I looked toward the stage. A massive banner hung from the velvet curtains, the Russell family legacy pillars of our community. Beneath it, my parents stood in a pool of spotlight. My father looked distinguished in his tuxedo, his silver hair gleaming. My mother was radiant in a shimmering gown that I knew cost more than my car. They were smiling the smiles of the righteous. They shook hands. They accepted compliments. They looked like the perfect American family. A knot tightened in my stomach. It was not jealousy. I did not want their spotlight. I did not want their hollow praise. It was grief. It was a profound, aching mourning for the people they could have been. I looked at them and saw the parents who had once taken me to get ice cream, who had taught me to ride a bike. I wondered when the rot had set in. I wondered if they had always been this way, and I had just been too young to see the strings. They look happy, I whispered. They look relieved, Marcus corrected. They think the deal closed. They think the money is in the wire. They think you stayed home. I adjusted the strap of my purse. Inside was the red folder. The truth? The program began. The master of ceremonies, a local news anchor with a practiced baritone, took the podium. He made jokes about the weather. He thanked the sponsors. He spoke about the importance of giving back, of building a future for the children. The irony was sharp enough to cut skin. They were building a hospital wing for children with money stolen from their own grandson. And now, the announcer said, sweeping his arm toward the head table, the moment we have all been waiting for, the presentation of the largest single gift in the history of the foundation. Please welcome the chairman of the board, Mr. Jonathan Eves. Mr. Eves walked onto the stage. He was a tall man with a serious face and glasses that caught the glare of the stage lights. He carried a single sheet of paper. He did not look at my parents. He adjusted the microphone. The feedback whined for a split second, a piercing shriek that silenced the murmuring crowd. Thank you all for coming, Mr. Eves said. His voice was flat, professional, cold. Tonight is a celebration of community, he continued. However, transparency is the bedrock of our organization. In light of that commitment, I have a brief administrative update regarding the program. I saw my father stiffen. He stopped chewing. My mother's smile faltered, the corners of her mouth twitching. Due to material concerns regarding the documentation and verification of the pledged assets, Mr. Eves said, choosing his words with surgical precision, the presentation of the Russell family legacy gift will be postponed. A ripple went through the room. It was the sound of 300 people inhaling at once. We take our fiduciary responsibilities seriously. Mr. Eves went on. We look forward to resolving these administrative matters in due course. In the meantime, Please enjoy your dessert. The band will resume shortly." He stepped back from the podium. It was polite. It was corporate. But in this room, in this social circle, it was a guillotine. Postponed meant investigated. Documentation concerns meant fraud. My parents froze. It was as if they had been turned to stone. My father's face went a shade of gray that matched the tablecloth. My mother's hand gripped her wineglass so hard, I thought the stem would snap. She scanned the room. Her eyes were wild, darting back and forth, looking for the source of the betrayal. She looked past the donors. She looked past the waiters. Then, she saw me. I was standing in the back, half obscured by a decorative pillar. But she saw me. For 1 second, the mask slipped completely. The benevolent matriarch vanished. In her place was a woman consumed by a hatred so pure it felt like heat radiating across the ballroom. Her lip curled. Her eyes narrowed into slits. If looks could kill, I would have dropped dead on the carpet. Then, she remembered where she was. She forced a smile onto her face. It was a gruesome, skeletal thing. She raised her hands and began to clap. She clapped for her own humiliation. She clapped to pretend that this was all part of the plan. My father followed her lead, clapping mechanically, staring straight ahead into the abyss. "Showtime," Marcus said. A young woman with a headset materialized beside us. "Ms. Russell, Mr. Thorne, Mr. Eves would like to see you in the green room. Now." We followed her. We walked down a long hallway lined with portraits of past donors, leaving the murmuring confusion of the ballroom behind. The green room was a small, tastefully decorated lounge used for VIP guests. Mr. Eves was already there, pacing the rug. The door opened behind us. My parents walked in. They brought the storm with them. "This is an outrage," my father bellowed, his voice booming off the walls. "Jonathan, what the hell was that out there? You just humiliated us in front of half the state." "We had an agreement," my mother shrieked. "The check is ready. The property is sold. How dare you treat us like criminals?" "Sit down, Richard," Mr. Eves said calmly. "I will not sit down," my father shouted. Then he saw me. He stopped. The air left the room. "You," he hissed. "Hello, Dad," I said. "You did this," my mother said, stepping toward me. Her finger was pointed at my face like a weapon. "You petty, jealous, ungrateful little—" "Mrs. Russell," Marcus stepped forward, interposing his large frame between my mother and me. "I would advise you to lower your voice. We are not at your dinner table. You are in the presence of legal counsel." "Who are you?" my father demanded. "I am Marcus Thorne," he said. "I represent your daughter, and by extension, the truth." "There is no truth here," my mother cried. "Just a daughter trying to sabotage her parents because she wasn't the center of attention at Christmas." Mr. Eves cleared his throat. "Actually, Mrs. Russell, there is quite a bit of truth we need to discuss. Specifically, the documents Piper sent over." "Forgeries," my father spat. "She faked them. She is unstable. She has always been unstable." "That is an interesting theory," Mr. Eves said. He picked up a file from the coffee table. "But my legal team has been reviewing the submissions for the last 24 hours, and we have found some inconsistencies with your story." He opened the file. "First," Mr. Eves said, "the waiver. The letter you claim Piper wrote in 2019 disowning the family. She wrote it?" My mother insisted. She threw it in my face. "She wrote it on paper that was not manufactured until 2021. "Mr. Eves said, "The watermark is quite clear, unless your daughter is a time traveler. Richard, this document was created last week." My father's mouth opened, but no sound came out. "Second," Mr. Eves continued, relentless. "The escrow company contacted us this morning. They have halted the closing. It seems the notary public, a Ms. Jenkins, has suddenly resigned her commission following a complaint filed with the Secretary of State. Something about a conflict of interest involving her husband witnessing a trust amendment. My parents exchanged a look. It was a look of pure terror. They realized the circle was closing. And finally, Mr. Eves said, there is the matter of the bank account, the one in Piper's name that she claims she did not open. She is lying, my mother said. But her voice had lost its power. It was thin and reedy. She needed money. We helped her. She is embarrassed to admit she took charity from us. We have the IP logs, I said. I spoke for the first time. I stepped out from behind Marcus. I placed the red folder on the table. I had the bank run a trace on the digital access for that account, I said. It was accessed exclusively from an IP address registered to this house, to your house, Mom, and the checks, the ones you claimed I endorsed. I pulled out the affidavit from the credit union manager. My bank manager confirmed the signatures are forgeries. I said, bad ones. You loop your P from the top. Mom, I loop mine from the bottom. You taught me cursive. Remember? You should have remembered how I write. My mother sank onto a velvet sofa. She looked suddenly very old. The makeup settled into the lines of her face like cracks in porcelain. This is ridiculous, my father muttered, but he was loosening his tie. He looked like he couldn't breathe. We were trying to protect the family assets. We were trying to do something good for the hospital. Does that count for nothing? You were stealing my inheritance to buy a plaque, I said, and you were going to let me take the fall for the debt you racked up in my name. We would have paid it off, my father shouted. Once the sale went through, it was a bridge loan. Piper, we just needed liquidity. You committed a felony, Marcus said. Several, actually. Wire fraud, identity theft, forgery. It is a family matter, my father roared. The door to the green room opened again. We all turned. Standing in the doorway was Casey. My sibling looked small in the oversized coat. Casey's face was pale, eyes red-rimmed. Casey wasn't dressed for a gala. Casey was dressed for a confession. Casey, my mother whispered. What are you doing here? I called Casey, I said. I told Casey to come. Get out, my father ordered. Casey, go to the car. We are leaving. Casey didn't move. Casey looked at our father, then at our mother, and finally at me. No, Casey said. The voice was shaking, but the word was solid. Excuse me, my father said, his eyes bulging. I am not going to the car, Casey said, and I am not signing anything else. Casey walked into the room and stood next to me. We weren't touching, but I could feel the heat of my siblings' presence, a united front for the first time in a decade. Mr. Eves, Casey said, looking at the board chairman. My parents told me that the papers I signed were for refinancing the cottage. They told me Piper was refusing to sign because she wanted to hurt the family. They told me if I didn't witness the amendment, I would lose my tuition money. Casey, shut up, my father yelled. I signed, Casey continued, ignoring him. But I didn't know they were backdating it, and I didn't know they were cutting Piper out until yesterday. I was scared. You ungrateful little traitor, my mother hissed. After everything we did for you. You didn't do it for me, Casey said quietly. You did it for the picture on the mantel. Mr. Eves closed the file. He looked at my parents with an expression of profound disappointment. Richard, Mr. Eves said, the foundation cannot accept this gift. The transaction is flagged. The escrow is frozen. And frankly, if half of this is true, I have a legal obligation to report the attempted fraud to the authorities. My father seemed to shrink 3 inches. The bluster evaporated. The arrogance drained away, leaving only a desperate, cornered man. He looked at me. His eyes changed. They went from angry to calculating. Piper, he said. His voice became smooth again. The negotiator. Piper, let us be reasonable. We are all emotional. We have all made mistakes. Mistakes, I repeated. You filed a quitclaim deed at a shipping store. We can fix this, he said, stepping closer. Look, the sale doesn't have to happen today. We can pause it, but we can't have a criminal investigation. That destroys everyone. It destroys the firm. It destroys your mother. It destroys you, I said. We can come to an arrangement, my father said. He reached into his jacket pocket, as if reaching for a checkbook. We can set up a new trust. For you, for the boy. What is his name, Leo? We can fully fund his education. Harvard, Yale, whatever you want. We can write a check tonight, a substantial one. My mother perked up. She saw the angle. Yes, she said, wiping her eyes. We can make you comfortable, Piper. We can put all this ugliness behind us. We just need you to sign a document, a simple non-disclosure agreement, just to say that this was a misunderstanding, to protect the family name. Money for silence, Marcus said dryly. Generosity for peace, my father corrected. He looked at me, his eyes pleading. Name your price, Piper. Half the cottage proceeds. 2/3. We can make you very wealthy. You won't have to work in that office anymore. You can be safe. I looked at them. I looked at my father, holding his invisible checkbook. I looked at my mother, adjusting her diamond necklace. They still didn't get it. They thought everything was a transaction. They thought love was something you bought, and safety was something you rented. They thought that because they were willing to sell their souls, I must be willing to sell mine too. They were offering me a golden cage. They wanted to buy my silence so they could keep pretending they were good people. They wanted to buy my son's future with the same money they had tried to steal from him. I thought about Leo. I thought about him sleeping in his small bed in our drafty apartment. I thought about the way he shared his cookies. I thought about his laugh. If I took their money, I would be teaching him that truth has a price tag. I would be teaching him that you can hurt people as long as you can pay for the bandages. I felt a sudden, clarifying calm. It was the feeling of breaking surface water after being held under for a lifetime. I looked my father in the eye. No, I said. My father blinked. What did you not hear me? I am offering you. No, I said again. I didn't yell. I didn't scream. I just let the word hang there. Simple and absolute. My child's future isn't for sale, I said. The silence that followed was total. It was the sound of a power dynamic shattering forever. My father's face crumbled. He realized, finally, that he had no leverage. He had no threats left. He had no bribes big enough. I turned to Mr. Eves. You have the documents, I said. You have the truth. Do whatever you have to do. Thank you. Ms. Russell? Mr. Eves said softly. I will. I turned to Casey. Are you coming? I asked. Casey looked at our parents. They were sitting on the sofa now, looking small and defeated. Two people in expensive clothes with nowhere to go. Yeah, Casey said. I am coming. We walked to the door. Marcus opened it for us. Piper! My mother screamed one last time. It was a raw, animal sound. If you walk out that door, you are dead to us. I paused. I didn't turn around. I was dead to you the moment I stopped being your mirror, I said. I walked out. We walked back down the long hallway, past the portraits, past the music drifting from the ballroom where 300 people were eating dessert and wondering where the guests of honor had gone. We pushed through the heavy double doors and stepped out into the night. The cold air hit my face like a blessing. It was snowing again. Big soft flakes that caught the light of the street lamps. The city was quiet. Oh my God, Casey breathed, exhaling a cloud of steam. I can't believe we did that. We did, I said. What happens now? Casey asked. Are they going to jail? Maybe, I said. That is up to the bank and the board. But it isn't up to us anymore. We told the truth. We are free. Marcus shook my hand. I will call you on Monday, he said. We have paperwork to file, but for tonight, go home. Thank you, Marcus, I said. Casey and I walked to my car. It was an old sedan, covered in a dusting of white powder. It wasn't a luxury vehicle. It wasn't a status symbol. It was just a car. Can I Can I come to your place? Casey asked. I don't think I can go back to my apartment. They have a key. Of course, I said. We have a couch, and we have leftover cocoa. We got in. I started the engine. The heat kicked on. Rattling slightly, I drove us away from the hotel, away from the gala, away from the toxic gravity of the Russell legacy. We drove in silence for a while, the windshield wipers keeping time. You were right, Casey said softly, looking out the window. About safety. Yeah. I always thought safety was doing what they said. Casey said, so they wouldn't get mad, but I never felt safe. I just felt managed. Safety isn't permission, I said. Safety is knowing that the floor won't drop out from under you because you built it yourself. We pulled up to my apartment building. It was a modest brick structure. The snow was piled up on the railings. I looked up at the second floor. The window was glowing. I had left the Christmas lights on for Leo. They were multicolored, mismatched, and taped up with Scotch tape. They weren't elegant. They weren't catalog ready, but they were warm. I turned off the car. We are home, I said. We walked up the stairs. I unlocked the door, my door, with my lock, and we stepped inside. The apartment smelled of pine needles and sleeping boy. The tree was still up, shedding needles onto the rug. The stockings were still hanging, a little crooked. I walked to Leo's room and cracked the door. He was sound asleep, one arm hanging off the bed, his chest rising and falling in a steady rhythm. I stood there for a long time, watching him breathe. I had no inheritance. I had no parents to call on Sundays. I had a legal battle ahead of me and a sibling sleeping on my couch who was recovering from a lifetime of manipulation. But as I looked at my son, sleeping in a house built on truth, I realized I was the richest woman in the world. I closed the door softly. I went to the kitchen and put the kettle on. The whistle would sound soon. A clear, sharp note in the quiet night. I was ready to listen. This concludes the story of Piper Russell. It is a story about the hard realization that sometimes the people who are supposed to protect us are the ones we need protection from. It is a story about the quiet, devastating violence of financial abuse and the loud, triumphant power of the truth. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I hope Piper's journey resonated with you. I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Where are you listening from? Have you ever had to stand up to family to protect your peace? Please share your stories. I read every single one. If you enjoyed this story and want to hear more tales of justice, resilience, and the complicated drama of human relationships, please make sure to subscribe to Revenge Stories. Until next time, remember the truth is the only legacy worth leaving.